Okay, so I've got my drawing starting to come together. So I'm going to switch back to the drawing which has my plan and set that up on a sheet, and then I'm going to set up sheets with the same title block in my sections file. And so before I go too far here, you may have noticed that I've got a bit of a probably not very good name for this file that has my plan. And so I just want to show you first, before I go too far with the page setup, I'm going to just reorganise these files a little bit and give that file a better name. Just show you how to do that with XREF. So all I'm going to do is just go to Save As. And so this really should be given a sensible name like ground floor plan. But then I want to make sure this file is still linked into my sections file. And so you'll see down here I've got the XREFs inserted, and I can easily select one of those, right click and go to external references, and that will bring up the external references palette, and then find the entry for that plan, which is this one here that had the old file name. And then I can scroll down and find where that's saved. Find that entry, click Browse, and then choose the file with my new file name. Okay, so now that's relinked to the file with this name, ground floor plan. So it's just a little thing, but you want to think about those things before you go too far with your layouts, because you'll need the layouts set up probably in two separate files. So now I'm going to go and make a page. So, and this is the process you should follow with virtually all of your layouts. The process will be basically the same. Go to your Layout tab first, right click, and then go to your Page Setup Manager. Don't select anything here, just click Modify, and then check your page. So one really important thing is to make sure that it's metric. If you've used the wrong template, this is where you'll find out. So it needs to say millimetres there, not inches. The scale should generally be 1:1, unless you're doing a reduced set or something like that. So nearly always, actually, when you're setting the page up at first, it'll be 1:1 there. Choose a page size. So I've already set this to A3. And that should work, but we may need to go a bit larger, up to A2. We'll find that out in a minute. What to plot should always be layout if you're setting up a layout. And then your plot style table. And so if you set the line weights in your layers, which is what we've been doing, then you can nearly always use monochrome, because that will simply make all of the lines black and use the line weights that you've set in your layers. If you've heard about people using colours for line weights, I'm just going to click on this button here to show you. You can set line weights for different colours. If you go into that option next to your plot style table, you can edit the plot style table. And then you can see here, if I say select colour 2, which is yellow, then I can set, oops, sorry, not a line type, a line weight, so that yellow will always print with, say, 0.35. So that's how you print using colours for the line weights. But that will override whatever you've set in your layers. So if you have set the line weights in the layers, then you don't have to set the line weights in here. This is the old way of doing it. You'll find a lot of, I don't want to say dinosaurs, but a lot of the older people who use AutoCAD still do it this way. I think they create work for themselves and everyone else, but some of them are just used to that and they insist on doing it this way. So you need to remember, when you go and work in firms that use AutoCAD, a lot of them still work this way. I won't say which firm, but there's a very big firm, one of the biggest in Sydney, or in Australia actually, that uses AutoCAD to design big multi-million-dollar developments. I know the CAD manager there pretty well, and I know for a fact he insists on everyone doing their line weights by colour this way. So when
you're doing a drawing,
yep.
you don't use layers in that? Or
No, you still use layers, but you don't need to worry about setting your line weight in the layers.
Okay.
You can leave it if you want to, and then you, for example, if you draw with colour 6, which is magenta, that will always be set with the plot style table to print at, say, 0.18 or something. Yeah. Yeah. So it's good in a way because it means you can look at a drawing and by looking at the colours you know exactly what the line weights are going to be. But if you like using this line weight option down here, that won't do anything. Right? It doesn't recognise the things you set in the plot style table. That's another reason I like doing it by layer. So, and it is the way that, I mean, Autodesk have been trying to get everyone to use this approach for years, and there's an even newer approach using a different kind of file. So you might see here it's got a CTB file. There's another option to use an STB file, which is called a style table, instead of a colour-dependent style table. And that's much more like Revit, and it's even better than the way I've been showing you. But they've had so much trouble just moving people onto the approach I've been showing you using layers, that I think they've given up on making that the standard. So anyway, just think about how you're doing your line weights. I think doing it by layer is good, but you need to know which method you've used to decide then which plot style table you'll be using. Monochrome is usually good if you're doing it the way we have been. And then with the quality options here, you can also adjust these. You might not have seen that. You can make it higher quality prints if you want to. So I might go to presentation. And then another option that you may want to think about, don't turn it on automatically, but if you've set transparency in your hatches, which is something we'll look at later, then that can be a useful option. So they're the things you'd be thinking about, but generally just the main things: page size, what to plot, and scale are the most important things, and then of course your plot style table. So I've got my page set up. Now I'm going to close this, and so I know then that I'm looking at an A3 page. You can see then it's got a very small print border, so I'm just going to go back and make a change. If I can just right click, go to Page Setup Manager, Modify, and this is using DWG to PDF, which is the Autodesk PDF generator. I'll change that to the Adobe PDF. Click OK, close, and you can see then we've got a different printable area. So the dashed line there inside the page border is the printable area on the page, and the Adobe PDF generator gives us a larger area. Okay, so now I'm going to go into my layers and just show you that I've made a layer called Viewport, and I might change the colour so that that stands out. And I'm also going to set that to non-printing. So you have that printer icon there, click on that, you can make any layer not set to not print. And then I can click onto my Viewport border and then change that to Viewport layer. You can see it was already set to this def points layer, which is going to do something similar, but it's good if you make a layer for the Viewport. And so just to show you then, if I look at the print preview, we don't get a border. So you can obviously work with those pre-existing viewports. If you've ever needed to make your own viewports, when you go onto a page layout, you'll see that it gives you an extra tab called Layout, and there you'll see the options to make additional viewports. So rectangular, polygonal, object, they're the three different options. Here though, I really only need one viewport, so I'll just stick with that for now. Okay, so looking at the brief, you can see you need an existing 1:50 plan at, yes, 1:50. So you can see then, it's already set to that scale, but yours might not show what mine does. So you can see down the bottom it's got this paper option. When you click on that button, it changes to model. click on it again, click where it says model, and it goes back to paper. So that's one way of switching between model space and paper space. But you can double click inside a viewport and that'll do the same thing. Double click outside the viewport and that'll take you back to paper. So that's a bit quicker. And then when you're in model space, if you zoom, it'll zoom just inside the viewport. If you draw something, it draws it again in model. So just draw some lines here. So if I zoom, those lines are going to get bigger and smaller, and they exist only inside the viewport. So the usual process for setting a scale and centering the things you want to show is to first just zoom roughly using the wheel and then panning with the wheel to roughly center the area that you want showing in the viewport. Then choose the scale. So here 1 to 50 is the scale I want. I was close, but you can see it did make it a little bit bigger. If I go to 1 to 100, it'll be half the size. So I'm just centering that roughly. And then I can go back to paper, so clicking on the model button or double clicking outside. Now I can select the viewport border and simply modify that to show the area that I want. It's often helpful to turn object snap off here so that you can just move the viewport border freely without snapping to anything. And you can of course use the regular editing tools like move and copy on viewports as well. So if I click on the move button there, you can pick it up and move the whole thing. Quick way of moving a viewport is just to select it and then you can drag from anywhere but the corner. So dragging the corners will stretch the viewport just like I was doing a minute ago. But now if I click and drag from the edge here, you can see I can just move the whole thing freely by dragging. Okay, so I've got a basic setup for my page, and now I want to try inserting a title block to suit that page. So I'm going to give my layout name, give my layout an appropriate name first. So by just right-clicking on the Layout tab, you can go to Rename. So I'll call this A3 1 to 50 plan. So actually we're doing existing. You can also just double click on that Layout tab to rename it. And then I'm going to go to the Insert tab. Insert and then more options and then Browse. And you can see I've already gone to this title block, but I'll show you where that lives. It's in the P drive. You go to Interior Design and then AutoCAD Library at the top, and then Blocks 2D, Title Blocks, A3, and then A3 Horizontal. Okay, so I'm going to click Open, and then OK, making sure I've only got insertion point ticked. And if you get an option to redefine, that's fine. I'm just going to redefine it. And you can see then it'll fit reasonably well on the page. And then prompt for all these different properties. So the amendments I don't need to worry about. That's what these entries at the top for, and then we can just put the job. So EDi. And more. Oh, sorry. And so some of these properties actually are named strangely, but you should be able to work out what they are. So we'll put the date there, 3108. And then you can click next to go down to the other properties. So yeah, they've got some unusual names, but I'll show you how in a moment you can change those. So this I think is the drawing number. So I'll say A101. Oops. And then the scale is 1 to 100. Oh, so 1 to 50, of course. Okay, so you can see then that those properties have gone in reasonably well. But it's got some other elements that we probably don't want, or we want to at least change. Okay, so if you select that block, you can then just right click and then go to edit block in place. Click OK, and then make your changes. So here I might just see if I can change that text. So and so the things that are just text items you can just change by double clicking as I have just then, and you can tell when they're text items by selecting them and then right clicking and going to properties, and it'll say text. So most of these things are text. The copyright notification there is just text, so I can just move that across. But then, again, some of these other properties are variable, and that means they are attributes. So we know that the drawing number should be an attribute. So let's go to properties. After I've selected it, right click, properties, and then you can see that I actually didn't put a value in there because I didn't know what it was. You can see the tag is drawing number, but the prompt is AO. So I'm going to change that to drawing number. Okay, so then I'll show you how that works now that it's got a more meaningful prompt. Right, so I'm just going to go and save changes to this block up on the ribbon there. Click OK. And now, if I double click, you can see it's giving me the same prompts that I had before. But I should be able to find the one with the prompt I've given. Here we go, drawing number. And so I can change the value down there to A101. The one that I thought was the drawing number was the project number. Now I can see the tags here, so that makes it easier to see. But essentially the person who made this I didn't make this one. So the person who's made it's just got a bit mixed up between tags and prompts. So you can work it out by going into this dialog box that you get by double clicking. Because you can see the tag and the prompt. But in many cases it's easier if you go and fix it by edit block in place. And you'll see why it's useful to do this in a moment. So if I go through and find the job number attribute, which is this one over here, again right click, go to properties, and I'll change the prompt there to project or job number. I like project number. That'll do. The scale there, instead of the prompt being 1 to 100, the tag really should have been that, but that's okay. So we'll make the prompt scale, and so on. So I'll just do the date finally and leave it at that. So again, the prompt there, we'll make just date will be fine. That's it. Okay, so then again, I can save this, and if I double click now, you can see date, for example, there has date for the prompt. What was this one? So, oh, that's the that's another field for the project. Probably just put the client in there. So yeah, we'll just say client EDi should be fine. It's a bit messy, but that'll do for me. So again, we don't have any amendments, so we can leave that one. And actually, if you want to, you could also change the size. So again, just by editing the block, you can move these things around. But I'll leave it at that for now, and then just show you how to make that accessible in the other file. So I'm going to save this file, and then select my my block, and then type W, and then enter. So W is one of the most useful shortcuts in Revit. It's a shortcut for W block, or right block. So it lets you export a block, or anything actually, anything you select, you can export this way and make it into its own file. And so you find a lot of people struggle with this and try to use copy and paste to do the same thing, but this is a much better way of doing it. So there you can see it's going into one of my other folders, so I'm going to click Browse there and choose a better folder. Okay, so I'm going to keep the same name. Just click OK. And so now I can go to my other file, repeat the process to set up the page, which I'll do at normal speed this time. So I'll just choose my options, same as I did before. Okay, so that's done. Except the quality. Sorry, I'll set that to presentation. There we go. So that's everything I set in the other file. And then I can get the layer set up. So I don't have a viewport layer here. And put the viewport on the layer. Set the size roughly, and then go into paper space, zoom roughly to show the elements that I want. Then try the scale, 1 to 50. So you can see that's made it a little bit bigger. So I'm actually going to try just moving that a bit further away. So it's cut off part of my section. Not a problem, because I can go back to paper space and simply adjust the viewport border. And then, just like I showed you before, just drag from the edge there to move that across. So now I might put that up a bit higher actually, and then my next section, I don't need to make a new viewport because I could copy this one, but just to go through the process, I'll make one from scratch, just so you can see how to do that. So I'm going to go to my viewport layer, go to the Layout tab, click on the rectangle or the button to make a viewport, and then choose rectangular. Click 2 points to make a new viewport. Go into model space, zoom roughly to get the thing I want in the viewport, and then choose my scale. So again, just pan. Now, one thing I should have pointed out before, you can pan as much as you want to inside a viewport, and that won't affect the scale. But once you zoom, that of course is going to make the things in your viewport bigger or smaller, which is another way of saying you're changing the scale. So zooming will always affect the scale, but panning won't. So here, if I choose 1 to 50, you can see it might have looked right, but it was actually slightly too small because I'd zoomed. But again, if you pan, that shouldn't change the size. In other words, it won't affect the scale. And that's something you need to do quite often. So then, a really useful option, once you have set the scale and you've got the things showing in the viewport and you want them to stay that way, there's an option next to the scale that you might have seen before to lock the viewport display. That's a really, really useful option. So once you lock that display, you can't change the scale anymore. You can't even pan. If you pan, it's going to pan the whole page. And if you zoom, it'll zoom the whole page. So it's a bit of a trick. What it's doing is switching back to paper space whenever you zoom or pan. And that is actually a really useful option because often you'll forget that you're drawing in model space and you'll start zooming and panning just to get a better look at things. And you'll lose the display that you've spent all that time setting up. So it's a really useful thing to remember. If you've set the display the way you want it to be, lock it. So here I'll do the same thing and I'll just show you why maybe it's useful if I'm zoomed in, looking at something, and I'm in model space. If I start zooming again now, it's going to change the scale and I have to go and set all of that up again. But if I just lock this, then I can zoom in and out even though I'm still in model space, and it's going to stay the same way on the page. Okay, so then the final thing, I can now go to Insert, More Options, Browse, and make sure I use the title block I've saved, not the one in the library now, because I've saved a new version of it, so I'm going to go and find that. And that will come up exactly the same way, but this time with the prompts maybe a little bit better. So don't care about the amendments, but the drawing number, A102, job name, and all those other things I can put in the same way. So EDi. Client EDi. Okay, so I won't worry about putting all the other things in, but hopefully you get the idea. Okay, so is there anything there that maybe would be a problem? Might be hard to tell, but I'll show you a print preview. There's something very obvious that you'd hopefully be thinking about. Have you seen this option come up actually when you go to print? That's common because there's a really good option once you've got a few pages called batch plot, which I'll try to show you later on. But at first you can just use this option, continue to plot a single sheet. So notice how I've lost the borders of my viewports, and that's what I want. But I've also lost my title block because the title block is on that same viewports layer. So I'm going to put that onto a layer that I have for text, or just temporarily you can put it onto layer 0 so that at least it will print. There we go. Okay, so I probably want to center that. And so because I'm feeling generous, I will put a copy of that title block for you onto the subject folder on the P drive. And I'll show you as well a trick you can use to get it in exactly the same spot on the page if you want it, because that's a really useful option. So if I select the title block there, right click, and then go to clipboard, copy with base point. You can't use the regular copy. So that's the secret. If you want to copy something into the same place on your different pages, the way you do in InDesign, use copy with base point, and then type 0, 0 for your base point. That'll be the corner of your page when you're in Paperspace. Now, I can go, I'll just delete this one, and then right click, go to clipboard, and then paste. I can even use paste original coordinates, but I'll do paste just to make sure, and then 0, 0 again, enter, and that's going to be in the same spot. And all I need to do then is change a couple of the attributes as well. I've got most of the properties from the other file. So this is the way a lot of people would do it when they're doing a lot of sheets. So then the drawing number. And notice how when you double click on an attribute, it goes to that property straight away. So there we are. That's an easy way of getting your sheet set up. And like I said, I'll give you a copy of that that block. Okay, so I'm going to put it into the P drive in the Construction 2 folder. CAD resources. And I'll call it A3 horizontal title block.